So what is a CTE, or a common table expression? It's not one of those things we can say, well, it's just like this. It's just like this thing that you all know in your everyday life, because there's nothing quite like it. It's a type of a virtual table, similar to the ease of a temporary table, but it's sort of like a drive table, like we talked about a minute ago. And it's kind of like a temporary named result set. And it acts like a temporary view or a runtime view. Availability of CTEs. CTEs, they were introduced in SQL Server 2005. It's supported in all versions of SQL Server since 2005 and all variations of SQL Server, including SQL Azure. So why use this? Why use common table expressions? It's another tool in your tool belt, basically. Why would anybody want to use this when I know how to use a derived table or a subquery? It's a great way to simplify your query. Like I mentioned earlier, you can have a big query that might be 4 or 5 pages long, and you look at it and you think, where the heck do I start to understand what's going on here? Well, you can break your query up into more logical pieces using a common table expression. You can use it for recursion. Now, in computer science, recursion is when a function calls itself, or a function calls back to itself to do recursive type calculations. In SQL Server, it's when a query calls itself. You might think, well, how do I do that? I've never seen how a query can actually reference itself inside of it. Well, that's what we can do with common table expressions. It's a way to make derived tables queries more readable, and it's an alternative to temp tables or table variables. Now, keep in mind also, it's just another tool in your tool belt. So don't think that it's a reason to replace everything you ever do with derived tables, or it's a reason to replace everything you've ever done with temp tables. There's great reasons to use temp tables. There's great reasons to use derived table queries or subqueries, but it's just another tool to use when it's appropriate. So the way it works is the syntax starts with the word with instead of select. It can be confusing if you're assuming that any query that select data would start with select. The scope of the CTE is confined to a single query, meaning when you build out a CTE and you run that select statement and you have that semicolon or the end of that select statement, it's gone. It's done at that point. You can't use it again in the next select statement. So the basic syntax starts out using the with statement, and most of the time when you're writing T-SQL, the semicolon on the end of your statement is an optional thing. However, if you have multiple queries in a batch inside of T-SQL with CTEs, if the previous statement is not terminated with a semicolon, your CTE or your with statement will fail at this point. So one habit I've got into is generally I'll put a semicolon at the beginning of the with statement, just in case it's being copied and pasted to somewhere where somebody forgot to put the semicolon at the end of the line. Our clean code standards generally dictate that we always want to use semicolons to signal the intent that the query is complete. However, it gets missed occasionally. So here it's with, and we give it a name, and then you can define some columns here, but they're completely optional. There's certain cases where you have to do it, but most of the time you don't need it. And then you use the word as, and just like in a subquery, you're going to put sort of a subquery type query inside of parentheses. And then we're going to select columns out of the same expression name that the CTE was given up top here. Select star from departments and see what we've got there. The IDs 1 through 17, and it shows what the parent departments are. So all of these here in this category are under the department campaign and et cetera there. That's the data we're going to work with. So let's start out with a simple CTE. We're going to select 3 columns out of departments, and again, like running a subquery, I'm just going to run the inner one and test it. And you can see there we go. We get ID, department, and parent from departments. We're going to wrap it with a common table expression using the with department CTE. We declare the columns we're going to get back. Now this declaration just covers the names of the columns. It doesn't give you any data types or anything like that. We use the as statement, and then we're going to select everything out of department CTE. We've just done what's very similar to what could have been done with a derived table query. Not real exciting yet, but hopefully everyone follows the syntax there so we can get to the more exciting stuff.